Right, what am I doing? I'm out in the dark again. I've come to this location because it's got some close stuff and some further away stuff down there. So if I do a bit of turbo here, boom, boom, there's some turbo, you can see. That's what it actually looks like on a mega headlamp. Right, we'll go back to where we were. Right, so what are we looking at here? We're looking at something new from Wurkkos. I'll give you a nice little 360 while I talk about this. 1.5 meter drop rating, dirt cheap, under 20 bucks, so about 15 quid. You can get it on special though. So very cheap. Wurkkos sent me this, and these are my first initial thoughts of this light, and so far I'm very impressed. You can see it's got dual mode switch on the side there, so you've got flood on the bottom or spot on the top. Type C chargeable, and it is power delivery, so that's Type C to Type C, and the clip is actually decent. Watch, a nice strong decent clip with proper knurling on the top, and they've actually put rubber in, and there's a battery in there as well. So far, very, very impressed. What's going on up top though? Right, let's have a look at this. In the middle is your spot, which I'll show you in a moment. I'll stop the waffling and, you know, less sizzle and more steak. And then around that you have 9 LEDs. So you have a central LED, which is 6,000 to 6,500 Kelvin, so quite white, and it's a spot, so it's designed to pierce on one particular sort of subject matter. Or you have the flood setting, which is those 9 around the side there, and again it all goes through a TIR, and the flood is supposed to be a more diffuse beam, which is going to hit the floor there. It also has full RGB, so what's the point of that? Well, I'll show you in a moment with the special modes. And like I say, fit and finish on this for such a cheap light, extremely impressed so far. It feels like almost like Olight or Ace Beam quality wise. I mean, I know something can feel lovely and be cheap inside, but my goodness, they've done a really good job on this so far. Right, let's turn this out and let's turn the light on. So turn that out. Right, let's turn it on. Boom. Let's go through some of the settings. So I need to unlock it because I did use E-lock, and it does have E-lock. So let's go through the settings here. So I'm going to come down to the floor here, and you may hear a noise in the background, but it's actually, I'm out in the middle of the fields here, and it is actually a tractor. So can you hear that? Listen. That's a tractor ploughing the fields at night. Don't ask me why. Anyway, right. So I'm going to switch between the modes there. You see how that changes? I'll come down a bit more. There it is on the left of the screen here. So spot, flood, spot, flood. And can you see the difference? I've done this in HDR. So if you've got the HDR TV and you've got access to 10-bit color, turn that on and you will see the difference. So color rendering is much higher. It's at 95-ish on the flood, but it isn't on the spot. So can you see the color difference there? You may or may not. To some people that might look less nice, but it is obviously a spot and a flood configuration. And in each of those, you can go from 1 lumen up to, on the spot anyway, from 1 lumen, which is their moon mode, all the way up to the turbo, which does have step down, and 680 lumens. But bear in mind, it is different. So if I go to the flood here, you go from 1 lumen up to, I think it's something like 320 lumens. So you get less lumens in total, but it's flooding out and you probably wouldn't be using a load anyway. So let's have a good look at this. So we'll go to the first setting there. So that's the first one. So turn it off and then hold the button down. Right, that is moon mode. So hardly anything, 1 lumen. Nice to see a 1 lumen mode there. Pretty good. And then you turn it off and then you're back on again. And I'll go through the modes, look. There's low. So I'm not going to go through every single lumen for every single thing here. So that's low, medium. Medium's still pretty impressive. Look, it's getting the sides there, and it's getting some of the seal in there. Look. High. Again, this is on spot. And then the next one, turbo. That's turbo, but again, you do get step down. And look, it's pointing off right at the distance there. Look, it's getting that avenue of trees. You see? It's pushing out. It's pretty good. So there is step down. You can see the beam profile there, so you can see the particles in the end. In fact, if I scruff up the floor a bit here and get some more particles, there, can you see them? So that gives you a nice visual indicator of what that actually looks like there. And then we will switch to the flood. There, you see how it's slightly different? So we'll go through the modes on flood. So we'll do that now, and I'll move the camera slightly there so it makes a bit more sense. So turn it off. And then if you go from off to just a hold, that's moon. So hardly anything there. Look, it is on, just to prove you. You're not seeing a lot there, are you? But 1 lumen up close is perfect. And it does have something similar in the E-lock, but I'll cover that in a moment. So we'll go back on, and then we'll go through the modes there. So low, not getting much. Medium, in fact, medium, there you go. And then high. And then we'll have one more. So it's not pushing out a lot, is it? But this is a tiny light, 600 milliamp hour battery, very, very small, 49 grams. One more, that's your turbo. So let's look at something up close. So let's look at this. I think that's a DC character there on the wall. So we'll go through those modes again. So we'll go to Moonlight. This is on Flood. So that's Flood, Moonlight. You can hardly pick out his teeth and the spikes on his Batman head there. I think that's is that the Joker version of Batman or something? I forget what he's called there. And then we'll turn that off. So back on and we'll go through the modes. See, in fact, I'll come back a bit here. There, that's better. Right, let's go through them. So low, medium, high, and lastly, turbo. Now, was that hitting the ceiling? Let's have a look. Yeah, look at that. And again, high CRI. You don't often get that on every light. And then we'll switch between the modes. So we'll go to the spot. So again, we're in Flood. That's spot. See the difference? Flood, spot, Flood. I love the way you can just instantly switch between those. Boom, brilliant. And let's look at the difference of that on the wall. So let's look at this guy here, this monster. So if we go through those modes, so a lot more reflective on the hotspot there. So low, medium, high, turbo. I'm impressed with that. So I've used both the spot and the Flood for hiking tonight, and it's been absolutely fine, no problems. A little bit of heat on turbos, but then and it does step down, but come on, this is a small light, you know. But I'm really impressed with it so far. So let's go over the LED modes, well, what I would call an auxiliary mode, really. So we'll turn that out. So if you double press, and I'll come down a bit here just so you can see what I'm doing, right? So if we double press, you go to the RGB modes. In fact, let's go towards a wall or something. There you go. So it's reflecting off something and you can see what the hell's going on. Right, so there you go. So you've got that mode, which is your standard color mode, and then you can click and hold and watch. It is rotating through all those modes, you see. In fact, I'll do it down on the floor. It'll be a lot easier. There you go. See that? So it is rotating through all of the different RGBs there. So almost like going through a color wheel, you see it? So pretty interesting. I can't think what I would use that for unless I was off to a rave or I was running a fairground, but okay, it's there. And then you can go to the next one, so double press. So that one there is a beacon mode. So it keeps the mode that the sort of colour that you just picked before there, and it will flash it. So it's just like a beacon, it will go on and off to let people know where you are or be a rally point or whatever. So if we double press that again, goes to the next one. Now I would call this emergency services mode, so you are getting red and blue there, so probably best not to use that in a car, because in case people think you're impersonating a cop or anything like that. But it is there. They are terming this emergency mode. Okay, you could maybe get away with that, who knows, right? It's there. Next one is a smooth rotation through the colours there. You see that? I'm not holding the button down, it is doing that. There you go. So it's going through them slowly. And then one more, double press. This mode, I don't know what I would term that as, so let's come down. I'm going to have to come right down to show you this one. So it is going to overexpose slightly, but if I do it on my leg, that's better there. If I do it on the leg, you can see it's going through a multitude of colours all over the shop. See it? Again, it's overexposing in the middle there, but I'm trying to show you. I should really find somewhere white to do this. What if I do it on the floor? Would that help? Yeah, a little bit, you see? You can kind of see what's doing there. And then the next one is a blue rotation. You see that there? Goes around and it's like a breathing mode on and off. And the next one is, well, it slowly goes through the different colours on, off, like a breathing, but goes through the different colours, you see? Like that. So you've got that if you want. The next one is mega mode or whatever they call it. I mean, look at that. I don't know what I'd call that. Again, fairground or close encounters of the third kind. I don't know. But it's there if you need it. If you try to call in a J dam or something, I don't know what the hell that's for, right? And then you're back to that one, which is your beacon mode. And then we'll go back to normal again and off. It does have lock. Put that back on. It does have lock, like I say, E-lock is triple click. So I think that about covers it. Again, I'll go closer to these trees and we'll show you the difference between the two modes. So come this way. And again, apologies for the noise, but there is actually a tractor over there. You may see the lights slightly in the distance there. So we'll go through that now. So go to its maximum there. So double click straight to maximum there. So see if you can work out what mode that is. And then that one, we'll go to turbo on that one. So you see the difference? Turbo on that mode, which is at the top. And then we'll go down to this mode. Boom, so that's your floody. maximum on flood. So, but up close, it's beautiful. I'm really liking it. Look, it's really bringing that out. And Skeletor's never looked so good. Look at that. He's loving that. Let's see what else we've got here. There's some good graffiti around here. And like I say, if you wanted to switch, boom, switch to your penetration mode there. Look at that. That's pretty good for a tiny light. I'll move it around there, look, just to show you. So that is your spot mode. And then we'll go back, boom. And that's turbo on the flood. So floody, obviously intended for up close, but brilliant. There you go. Right, I think I've covered it all. Like I say, really good light, very, very small. Let's turn the headlamp back on. There you go. That's what we're looking at. It is the Wurkkos, and I'll show you the model number. It is here. It's the HD03, 49 grams, about 15 to 20 bucks. Extremely well made. It's got everything you can need. The only thing I would probably change so far is the magnet on it's okay. I would like to see a bit stronger, but it's certainly okay, and it's stuck to everything I stuck it on, so I can't complain. But maybe it's a bit stronger on that. And the UI might be a little bit ridiculous. Although I've just done it there, and you're probably thinking, what on earth are you whinging about? That's easy. Okay, you might think it's easy, but mass market might go, oh no, what's going on here? But I'll mention that in the full review, because I will carry this for 2 weeks. I'm going to clip it to things and have it in my pocket. But these are my early thoughts. So if you've got any questions on this, stick them down below, and I will do my best to answer them. There you go. Right, arm off. So let's turn this off, and we'll use just this light to hike back. So put it on flood mode, and we will go to maximum. So that's maximum there. Beautiful. Look at that. I think that's wonderful. There you go. Right. In fact, I'll hold it like that and then walk along there. Brilliant. Look at that. Right. In fact, you know what? Turn this off. I prefer the darkness. There you go. Good night.